Malasana pose. The full version is knees together with heels down. If you do active sports like me and you're a runner, very hard to get the heels down with knees together, so I have to rise the heels up. Also taking the feet a little wider. I have a slightly weaker lower back, and as you drop the hips, very easy to slip into that lower back. So tilt the pelvis forward. So taking the feet wide and tilting the pelvis will allow you to bring the chest up. Also, maybe taking the feet out to a 45-degree angle, keeping the chest elevated as you drop the hips and track the knees over the feet will allow you to bring the hips down lower than the knees. Always reassessing as you go, and then bringing a little pressure between the inner thigh and the elbow will help you have a strong foundation in this pose. Taking your time to exit with your breath, inhaling always on the way up. Using a little elevation with a rug or a rolled up mat will also help. Drop those heels if your flexion is not so great. Still can't get your hips down, warm up before you do this pose. Hip mobility. Start circling your hips and then bring it into some isolated hip socket movements. Outward, external rotation, inward, internal rotation of the hip socket. Taking your time to stall at any areas you feel the most tension. Then take your feet wide again, angle your feet, lift your chest, and lower the hips. Now if you can start with just 50% and moving through the knee and the ankle joint, opening the chest by pressing the arm against the inner thigh. This is level 1 if you know you really tighten the hips and knees and ankles. Level 2, using your hands on the floor, go for knee touches, swiveling through the hips a little bit more, mobilizing the hip socket. If you're really confident in that movement, move without hands. Then we go a little deeper, taking it to the outer edge of the foot and stretching forward folding over that foot. Working into the outer thigh and the glute. Beautiful stretch. This is going to really warm up, and as you get more confident with the movement, again, relieve yourself of using the hands and stretch forward without any assistance. Try to find some fluidity in the movement. And again, this can be done with elevated heels on a mat or a rug, with an elevated chest and engaged abdominal strength. Tilting that pelvis to make sure that you're not falling into the most vulnerable part of the spine, the lower back. Keeping that spine straight all the time, stretching up. Again, from the side you can see that pushing into the inner thigh, pushing in towards the elbow. You can make a little exercise to be more spine aware, arching and straightening the spine. And then removing the elevation, softening the knees, and taking some lumbar extension with dangling pose. If you wish, as a beautiful warm-up of the lower spine, making sure again you're active through the belly, rolling through vertebrae by vertebrae, pushing the pelvis forward 50% up and then coming up. Other assists are using a bolster or something a little higher, a chair, and sinking the hips down onto it. And as you can see, with that elevation, it will allow you to keep a good spinal position. So when you do the setup, tilt your feet out to the sides, 45 degrees, to make it a little easier to access this pose. Nice wide stance, lifting the chest, tilting the pelvis. If you, on the way down, notice your arches start to collapse, this can be an indication of tight hamstrings, or potentially tight piriformis, which is a deep external hip rotator, and sometimes responsible for sciatic pain. Another option is that it's your gluteus medius, which needs a little bit more strength. It could also just be that you have an ankle injury or a sports injury. Other aspect is your knees. If your knees start to internally rotate, it's also a weakness of the glute or tight adductors in the thighs. The IT band, which is the fascia that runs alongside the outside of the leg. If you're arching your back excessively, particularly as you come down, you might have tight hip flexors or just a weaker core which needs strengthening. It could also be your erector spinae muscles that run down the sides of your spine, or a tight thoracic middle spine if your spine is rounding. It's a good exercise to do is to straighten the legs and come back into a squat just to feel what's happening. You can work on the elevation of your spine by adding in some shoulder opening and chest opening by taking the right arm to the top right corner of your mat and extending the left arm up. You can add to this by taking a bind. Right arm bends around the right knee, left arm goes behind to grab fingertips, interlace or grab the wrists. A great assist is with the strap, taking that strap in your hand as you take it round the knee and catch the other end of the strap with the other hand. And then you work the hands towards one another to open up the pectoralis minor, major, front body, eventually to hold the hands. 5 to 10 breaths should be enough. The stronger you can build your foundation, which is standing on your feet in Malasana, the stronger your lower abdominal muscles and pelvic floor will be. And that in turn will bring a little discomfort to the front shin as you're getting a lot of strain on that front part. But the more you practice this pose, the more your calves will release, which will mean that you'll get a nice balance between the front of the shin and the calf muscle and the ankle all opening up. If you feel like you're leaning to one side in the pose and one hip is favoured, it might be just a little stability problem, or maybe you've got an injury in the past which is causing you to compensate on one side. So just be aware of that as you move through this pose.